Well, hello, Holy Ghost Stories listeners. I am so glad to be talking with you with video. We actually never get to talk this way. It's always only my voice, and now you are blessed to see my face, but not just my face. I'm here with Kendall Ramseur, the individual, the mastermind, the man, the myth, the legend, who has
Oh my.
been alongside me to create the most recent episode of Holy Ghost Stories, the story of Saul and his trip to the Witch of Endor, which we have called The Lion, the Witch, and the War Zone. Kendall, say hello, would you?
Ah, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Justin.
Absolutely. If you haven't been following along yet, I've made some announcements about this episode. Been super excited about it. Kendall is, and I've said this once. I'll end up saying it again. He is so talented. He's super gifted, and he is honestly way out of my league. And
Oh,
was kind enough. I reached out to him honestly, kind of on a whim, months and months and months ago, earlier this year, and asked him if he would be interested in talking about licensing a couple of his existing pieces of music for use in Holy Ghost Stories. We got on a Zoom call and we kind of really hit it off and just enjoyed talking and spending time together. He was excited about the project. Before we hung up on that call, we had basically dreamt up what you have maybe already listened to today with this episode. So I'm so excited that it's here finally. I'm so excited to share it with you. I could not be more happy with what Kendall produced and what we were able to create together. And so I thought it would be fun to talk about what we did and how we did it. And so we're just going to work through a couple of questions. Kendall's going to ask me questions. I'm going to ask him some questions and give you a sense of what it was like on our side of creating this project together. Kendall, does that sound good to you?
that sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Okay. So here's question number one. You're sitting down composing this episode, the score for this episode. We broke it up into 8 scenes. What was your favorite scene to score, to write and like create the score for? Did you have a favorite scene to score, like a favorite specific part of this project?
Right. No, that's a really good question. It's a tough one to answer just because for me, all 8 scenes were just so rich and um, I don't know, just they were just rich. Just how you narrate the stories there is so beautiful, and it's almost as if you can you can smell the words, the you can hear the armies. It's just you feel like you're so much in each scene. Um, yes, it was such a journey for me, starting from scene one all the way to eight. Um, and each scene was just such a joy to score. Um, but okay, I have to answer this. So if I
You do. You gotta
if
you
I
gotta
have
pick one.
if I have to choose one scene, um, it would probably be scene eight. Um, Scene eight, and this is why I would say that. You know, from
Okay,
scene
wait,
one,
before you
yes,
say the reason, just so
yes.
folks understand what we're talking about. Scene 8 is you go ahead and like just a quick summary of what's happening in scene 8.
Okay, so scene eight is um, pretty much this is Saul's death. This is when Saul dies, and pretty much that prophecy that Samuel uh, gave Saul in scene, what was it, scene one?
Yeah.
Scene one, I think it was. Yeah, it manifests itself. It's when it actually takes place, and so you just see all of the bad decisions that Saul made. Finally, the fruits of those bad decisions, they manifest, and so yeah, it's just a really, really like sad moment just as you're walking with Saul from scene 1 all the way to scene 8, there's sometimes you're just like, oh man, Saul, like I just wish you would get it together. And
Yes.
there's still like a little glimmer of hope, but by scene 8, the writing is on the wall, and he's killed, or he's killed by himself. But yeah, so that's what takes place in scene 8.
Yeah. So what were you trying to do? Like as you scored that scene, what were you trying to accomplish, and why did you enjoy trying to accomplish it?
Yeah, man. All right. So, from scene 1, one of the things that I set out to do was to create, I guess, somewhat of a theme or a motif for the main characters of the story. So that's Saul, that's Samuel, and the witch. So each one of those characters, they have their own motif, or particularly with Samuel, his motif is connected to, um, how can I say this? It's connected to a particular moment, dark moment, within the episode. So it's pretty much whenever he's chopping the king up into all these pieces. So it's very much connected to the sword, and so the one of the things that I just love so much is being able to take these motifs and recycle them in new ways throughout, a larger work, and then being able to bring those all back at the end. It just gives such a sense of like, whoa, like we were on this journey together. We've come full circle, and each one of those motifs, they mean something. There's like an emotion that's carried along with each one. And so scene 8, I said, man, this one's heavy. I want to um, make sure that I create something that's not too disconnected from the previous scenes, right? We want to make sure we're continuing to move forward, but we're also wanting to make it feel as if like I wanted to make sure that it felt as if like, whoa, like we went on this amazing journey together. And yes, it was painful, but we made it to the end of this journey. And God has this amazing plan. After Saul's death with David, there's still great hope, for God's people. And so, yeah, I think there was just so much joy, like being able to come to the end of all these scenes and say like, whoa, like, you have these amazing characters with these what I think are very special little motifs, and you're weaving in them together to create this finale in a sense. It just brought me so much joy, and
Yeah, I loved it
yeah,
so much too, because you had done
yeah,
such a great job establishing um, these sort of musical moves attached
mm,
to each one of these main players in the story, and then to hear those all come together in the end. That's always
mm,
my favorite part of a musical, like a really well done musical, is those sort of reprise moments
yeah,
where those original lyrics or melodies from earlier scenes are brought into new scenes, and they take on new meaning, and they remind
yeah.
you of where you've been in the story and all that. Like in Hamilton, when they start dropping in that look around stuff
Oh
toward the
yeah,
end, I'm like, oh. Anyway, so it's so great to
yeah,
see you doing that at the end of this
yes,
story. And I remember I had said, as we talked about that scene before you started working on scoring it, you
mm,
had the script that I had written, but we were talking through each scene before you sat down to score it. And as we were talking about
yeah.
that one, I remember saying you are going to have a lot to accomplish in this scene, because it's like lifting a lot of heavy weight to
Yeah,
accomplish a lot of different things, because it's the denouement. It's like wrapping everything up, and we're sort of removed from the action, but then we slide back down into the thick of the action with Saul on the battlefield in his final moments, and then we pull
yes.
back out, and then we get a lot of hope at the end of a pretty dark story. And I was like, I don't know how you're gonna do all that, but good luck. And you did it. You came back with this incredible piece of music that brings us
Uh,
to all of those places at the end of that journey. Anyway, so
yeah, thank you,
good
Justin.
answer.
Yeah.
That is a great scene, and a great few moments in the score. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
absolutely.
Well, what about you? What was your favorite scene to write?
So, man, from a writing perspective, I would say my favorite scene to write was the actual interaction with the Witch of Endor. That
Mm,
has been a scene in the Bible that has always really captured my imagination, and it's a crazy moment in the Bible.
yes, yes.
You're flipping the page back and forth as you read, like, wait, what? Did that is that real? Did that just happen? Like, I mean, there's a witch and it's like a real witch, and there's a ghost and
Yeah,
it's like a real ghost.
right.
And, uh, and so I was so excited to sit down and write that scene, and writing it was in fact so much fun. And one
Mm,
of the things that I loved uncovering in the research part of it was the likelihood from some of the language in the Hebrew in that scene is that she's actually they're at a pit. Like
mm,
that's what the focal point of this sort of connection to the realm of the dead was there in
right.
Endor. And so as soon as they're like not around her little cafe table in her house with a like a crystal ball, but out in the
Right,
middle of the night on the edge of a pit, and
right,
Samuel
right.
somehow coming up out of that is exciting. And it was so fun to imagine that and to write it. And I gave myself a little bit, and the listener too, um, a little bit of leash to imagine the witch even in a couple of different, very
I
different
love that.
ways, right? Because we
Absolutely.
don't know what she was like, and like physically speaking. And
Right.
so it was fun to sort of go down a couple of different trails before doubling back and finally committing to a physical description that seemed likely. But anyway, there was just a lot
Absolutely.
going on in that scene, and it was a really fun one to write.
Beautifully written. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thanks. And I know
Absolutely.
that when I got the score back for that scene, I was clapping out loud. I just and because I thought I told even when I was editing it the other day, I told Jennifer, my wife, I was like, man, I just took my headphones off. I was like, if you're gonna really nail a scene in this story with the score, I mean,
That
it
was the one.
needs to
Oh,
be
thank
this
you.
one. And man, you just nailed it. So, okay,
Thank you.
so that's good. What about
Uh,
what about the sort of an opposite version of that question? What was a scene that was really difficult for whatever reason to score
mm,
in this episode?
yes. It's funny. I would actually say that scene. The one which was your favorite was mine. It
Really?
was,
Okay.
yes, it was I love the scene, the narration, but it was a tough one. Tough. That's a funny word. It presented its challenges just because it is the longest scene. I think, it clocks in a little bit over 8 minutes, maybe eight to
Way
nine minutes.
long, much longer than like any other scene in any
Right,
episode of Holy Ghost Stories. There's so much that goes on. Yeah.
right, right. And so I was thinking, whenever I saw the the timestamp, I was like, oh, okay, this is 8 to 9 minutes. How can I create this score that supports, of course, your narration, but also has motion? It's like, we're not just like you said, we're not staying in like this one place at a coffee table with this crystal ball. It's like we enter into this home, to the witch's home, and then we head to the pit, and then Samuel comes up, and then from there we head back to the witch. So there's movement taking place,
Right.
um, and great darkness. This is like when Saul falls. This is that moment. And so I said, man, I really want to do a good job with this, and I don't want to drop the ball on this climax, of this episode. So, you know, and then there was like this. There's so many different feelings and emotions with this one. Um, then there's like, this whole idea of darkness, right? And like I can go dark, but then I was thinking like, okay, I know Justin wants this to be dark, but how dark should we go? I don't want to like totally like creep people out, but like you encouraged me. You were like, no, go dark. So
Yeah, man.
I, I
Yeah, no,
believe
some of
that.
the best feedback on Holy Ghost stories I've gotten is from somebody, a listener who said his wife listened and then was mad at him because he didn't warn her, and she listened right before she tried to go to bed one night. And she's like, okay, that's your fault. Never again will I listen to this podcast right before I go to bed. But I think
Yes, yes.
that's part of honoring the truth of these stories, right? Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
tell me a darker moment. And the darkness is so dark in stories from the Old
Mm,
Testament, in moments that are dark. It's so dark because no one's making it up, right? Because
mm,
these are real things that really happen to real people, and they're really tragic, and they're
right.
coming up, like encountering actual forces of evil. And so yeah, I was all for you honoring all
Yeah.
of that with the score.
Right, right. No, I love that freedom. I really did. And I played around with a lot of particularly with the strings, a lot of extended techniques. So, you get a lot of harmonics, false harmonics, these little tremolos with the harmonics to give like this really eerie, ominous type of tone and feel. So it was a lot of fun to write. But I felt that pressure, just like, oh man, like I want to
Yeah.
make sure I land this.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you felt that pressure. I did not want to let you off the hook for that. And man, you really delivered. Uh,
Oh, thank
Before
you.
we move on, that you mentioned those like extended techniques
Yes,
and all those weird harmonics and stuff. You remember what I said to you about what it like when I first heard that, what it
yes,
sounded like to me?
yes, yes. A merry-go-round, right?
Yeah, like a
Yes.
creepy merry-go-round, like squeaking around, like
Right.
no one's on it, and it's a cloudy, cold day, and it's an empty
Right,
playground, and this squeaking around. Like, you guys listen, if you haven't listened to this episode already, or if you have, go back and listen if you didn't catch this. I'm telling you,
right.
it sounds like a merry-go-round, and it's a point in the story where Saul is just in an eddy current of poor decisions and
Right.
like distance from Yahweh that he is choosing and rechoosing again. And
Mm.
when I heard it, I immediately said to Kendall, I was like, "Oh man, like yes, it sounds just like a creepy merry-go-round because we've been in this place before, and here we are again, and Saul can't seem to get out of the eddy current." And
Right.
that was the one. Every other time I found something in the score and I was like, holy cow, did you mean to do that? And Kendall was like, yes, I did. This is my job. Yes,
That's right.
it was not an accident, but this is the one time I was
Right.
like, it's like a merry-go-round. And you were like, yeah, I didn't mean to do that.
I didn't, right? I didn't mean
That was just a
to-
serendipitous moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
hilarious. Well, what about you? What was your most challenging scene to write?
with, I think from a writing side, one of the most challenging ones for me was the first scene, because it was a hard one of the, and this is difficult oftentimes, writing these episodes of Holy Ghost stories, is trying to decide where to begin the story.
Oh,
uh,
yes.
right? Because sometimes that's cut and dry and it's easy, but other times, especially with some of these people like Saul, who we've got so much information on, and we do really follow a long arc in their story and their life. It's hard to
Mm,
decide like when to jump in and begin telling the story. And
right.
I think I had tried to begin it much later, like uh, more where we fast forward 13 years and he's really on the verge of the battle with the
Mm,
Philistines, that just before it happens is when he goes out and sees the witch.
mm,
But I just felt like beginning there, we didn't get a chance to see who Saul was and sort of where he was mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Um,
right.
and I didn't want to just tell everybody where he was. Like,
Mm,
that's rule number one of good storytelling, right? Is show, don't tell. Show, don't
right.
tell.
Right.
And so I could have just done a big, exposition info dump
Mm,
there on the front end, but that didn't feel right, and it wasn't interesting, and it didn't give us a chance to see Saul
Mm-hmm.
really becoming who he's sort of calcified into by the time we join him on that battlefield 13 years later. And so
Wow.
the hard part was figuring out where to, and I decided to begin 13 years earlier with that one scene in the tent where Saul has refused basically to obey Yahweh's instructions, and
Right.
has kept King Agag of Amalek alive, in
Mm.
direct opposition to Yahweh's clear instruction. And Samuel calls him on it and has to confront, and it gets very gruesome and bloody before the end of
Right.
it. But that scene where Saul just thinks he has a better plan than Yahweh, that is
Mm.
so Saul, and
Wow.
it characterizes so much of his life, and the most unfortunate parts of his reign. And so I finally was able to decide, okay, this is where we will begin the story. We'll see Saul acting this way. We'll see him get all this attitude, and then we'll fast forward to where
Yes.
the seeds of that sort of attitude are really, and the judgment from Samuel as a result of it are really now growing into and bearing fruit.
Mm.
So that was a tough one to just the beginning in general of that story was a tough one to write. Um,
Right.
but once I decided to start way back in that one scene, I felt like I was happy. I was happy with it.
Mm. Yes, yes.
So,
No, I loved how where it started. And I think what was so interesting to me is because I didn't know that it was, after Saul received the prophecy from Samuel, I didn't know if it was still 13 years. He was
oh
still
man,
clinching the throne
yeah,
for
right.
13 years. And it just made me think. I tell you, I just love how you do the storytelling. Justin, I don't know, it
Thanks,
makes you
man.
really reflect on your own life and or lives of others. It's just like, whoa, like you can actually be operating, living your life uh, in, in a place where you were called, but the grace has lifted and God
Yes,
cannot be pleased with you,
yes,
but you're still operating in that same vein. And it's just like, whoa, like this is like, this is crazy,
yeah.
but it's just the beauty of how you weave all of this together. And yeah, so it was a lot of, like I said, I definitely learned something from that little nugget of, no, this was 13 years that he clinched on, that he
Yeah.
held tight to this throne and wouldn't fall into alignment with God's will. Um, yeah, just really, really well done. So
Good, man. Thanks.
yes, yes.
Okay, one last question, and then we'll
Okay.
wrap up. Uh,
Yes.
how would you explain or describe? Because like people are going to listen to this, they have no idea like what this looked like on the creation side. How would
Ah,
you describe to people or describe to people, describe or explain what our collaboration look like what the collaborative process looked like between us?
yes, yes. So let's see. The first step was Justin sent me over the script, and I was able to read through that, get the storyline, where we started, where we were ending. And then at that point, he sent me over the individual scenes where, I could hear the spoken voice, the narration, which went along, of course, with the script. And at that point, I was able to get a good idea of like the tone, just with the inflections in his voice. But we would have meetings, you know, before each scene and after each scene. So, for instance, he would give me scene one, and then he would give me like colors or the tone or the spirit that he was hoping to kind of bring forth with the music. And so I would take those notes and sit with them and get on my piano and just start to work out the key, right, and then from the key a tone, um, you know, and then a little bit then from there a chord progression and just the flow in which I felt like kind of help to move us forward, but also really support and accompany Justin's narration. And then from there, I would compose it. From it would go from being on the piano to then like a larger ensemble. So by scene 8, I mean, we're full orchestra, which is,
Hmm.
epic full orchestra, which I really enjoyed. But then, in scene 1, there were moments of kind of just solo cello, or cello with like a little bit of a pad that accompanied it. But yeah, so once I would kind of build it out into a larger piece, I would send it over to Justin, and we would talk about it and say, okay, these are the things that I absolutely love, and then it would be, but can we add this, a little bit more darkness here? Those are the moments that always tickled me. It was like, man, like, okay, I have that freedom, a little
Kendall,
darker,
make me afraid.
I
No,
was
I'm
like, I
telling
would
you,
lean a little.
when you would send those, to me, it was always so exciting. Like it was like Christmas. Like I'd get a present, and I was so excited to
Yes,
unwrap it. I
right.
say that was true with scene 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Mm.
Scene 1 was not that way because I hadn't heard anything yet.
Oh,
And
right.
like we'd never worked together. I'd heard stuff that Kendall
Yeah,
had created before, and this is why I reached out to him. I was really excited. I knew he was talented, but
mm,
this is a different thing, and you don't
right.
know, like if somebody's gonna be on board with, like share your vision or just be on a
Of
completely
course.
different page, right, or whatever. I remember you sent me
Hmm.
that one, and I was in France, like my sister's getting married, and so I had sketchy internet connection, and like I couldn't really get to, and honestly I was glad because I was so afraid to open it up. And finally, like I think like a week goes by. We're leaving France. We're in the Dublin airport,
Right.
and like on our way to Belfast. And I was like, okay, I have Wi-Fi in the airport. I have to open this thing up. I'm just
Right.
gonna take it. I'm just gonna open it up, and we'll see what
Right.
happens. And
Right.
uh, and from that point on, it was very exciting.
Right.
But man, I was on pins and needles. I was just hoping like, oh, this could
Right.
be just really bad. And then what? What I'm gonna be like? Yeah, so never mind.
Right. Right. Not in
Anyway,
alignment
but
there, right?
it was wonderful. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that process. Like being able to talk through a scene and
Hmm.
talk through some of the moods and like you said, the colors, almost like we're sort of creating a mood board for the scene, and then
Yeah.
you're sitting down and somehow magically bringing all of that to life, and then I get to hear that with the narration, and
Yes.
then talk about what I love, which was usually like so much. I remember there were at least 3 times when I sat down with a scene and I'm listening with my eyes closed and just getting full body chills. I
Wow.
was so excited, and it was just so perfect. And then if
Yes.
like I would have a couple of things every once in a while where it was like, hey, could we do this, or could we give a little more space here, or make this
Right.
bridge a little stronger between these two, sections, or make
Hmm.
it darker or whatever.
Make it darker.
Um, and man, you were always so good to be like, yeah, absolutely. And then usually like
Right.
somehow magically same day you sent me something back, and it's just exactly what we had talked about. So that
Wow.
process was so much fun. uh,
Hmm.
and uh, and I mean, I love the product that we came up with. I'm really, really proud of it,
Absolutely.
and I cannot wait for
Ah,
for people to hear it. This is while we're talking right now. This is the night before it drops, and so I'm just on the edge of my seat, ready to share it with
yeah.
all of Holy Ghost Stories listeners. But as much as I love the product, I love the process as well.
No,
So
yes.
Kendall, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you. You will always and forever be a part of the Holy Ghost Stories
Ah,
family. And man, I would just be heartbroken if this is the last time we get to do this. So I'm just gonna.
oh, me too.
I'm,
Don't
I'm
even
already
say
praying that we get a
it.
chance to do this kind of thing again together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That goes both ways. And it was such a pleasure working with you, Justin. And I'm just so excited to share this episode. It's so funny. before I started working on this episode, I went back and listened to all the other episodes that you've created, and I felt myself getting like, come on, Justin, there needs to be more. There needs to be more. Like I just wanted more and more
More episodes. Oh,
absolutely.
nice. I'm working on it, man. Okay.
Yeah. Just hurry up,
I'm
Justin.
dancing as
Hurry.
fast as I can.
Beautifully
That's
done. It's
awesome.
such a pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Hey, people can find some of your music at least on Spotify, right?
Yes, yes. Most of the my compositions are there. So yes.
Okay, so you can look like his name down there on the screen. Just search Kendall Ramseur,
Mm,
and you can pull up some of his stuff on Spotify. It's beautiful. Selah is an album that was the first thing that I encountered that really made me fall in love with what you're doing, and so that would be a good place to
wow.
start, you guys, if you go check him out. You're also on Instagram, yes?
Yes, Instagram,
Okay,
Facebook. Yeah, just my name, Kendall Ramseur.
okay.
Then of course I have a website, kendallramseur.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
So
Well, you guys, if you have not listened yet to The Lion, The Witch, and The War Zone, by the way, yes, if you're wondering, is that is that an intentional nod to Narnia? Of course it is. Come on, you guys. No, it started as like kind of a fun thing, and then I decided, no, this is good because here Yahweh is this lion. There's a little Easter egg part in the episode where there are some lions roaring off in the distance, and then you've got, of course, the witch, and then the war zone is not just the battlefield on the slopes of Gilboa, but of course Saul's inward self. He is a man at war with himself until until a part in the story where he's not, and that's where things get really sad and really dark when he finally just gives up. But yeah, I was writing this episode, and Kendall and I were meeting about it through like across the world. I would tune into our FaceTime call, and Kendall be like, "Okay, where are we today?" Um, and but then I finally finished the episode here in Ireland, where we're living now, and one of Ireland's most famous sons is C.S. Lewis, and so I thought, what a perfect
wow,
homage to him and
that's
all the
amazing.
creativity he's sparked and inspired in me to give a nod to him in the title of this episode. Anyway, so if you have not yet listened to this story, what are you doing? Go find a dark corner, turn the lights off, get some headphones on, get in your car and go for a drive at midnight. Make it scary, you guys, and just lean in.
Uh,
Enjoy this here in this week right before Halloween. That was intentionally timed to give you
there
guys
we go.
a holy haunting at just the right time of year. So, Kendall, thanks again, man.
Yes,
Very much appreciate it. Best to you and to your family. And
thank
you
you.
guys, we hope, Kendall and I both hope you are deeply blessed by this episode.